Okay, go ahead.
Sometimes life just doesn't make sense. How could Taylor Durden, a senior in college, planning to help homeless youth after earning her master's degree, be responsible for the death of Jessica Bateson? I'm sure that over the course of this trial, you have actually grown to like her. In fact, I have actually grown to like her. Unfortunately, the facts show that she is, in fact, guilty of hazing and manslaughter. Yes, Taylor is a good kid, but whether she is good or not, on August 29, 2011, she exhibited reckless behavior resulting in the death of Jessica Bateson. To qualify as manslaughter, an act has to be committed willfully and recklessly. Unlawfully and recklessly. To be hazing, an act must be committed willfully and recklessly. The prosecution has proved to you today that Taylor Durden is guilty of both of these crimes. Jamie Chesler performed the autopsy and clearly said in her affidavit, such massive water consumption could not have been voluntary. She also discredited Dr. Paulson, saying his focus has turned from service to the public to the financial rewards of being an expert witness, or a hired gun. With this inside information and also the fact that over the last 5 years, Brian Paulson's average income just from being an expert witness every year is $200,000, we can draw the conclusion that he is probably not trustworthy. Additionally, may I point out who was actually there at the autopsy? Jamie Chesler. Dr. Paulson was not even present. Alex Richards, also a senior in ESC, met Taylor while pledging for the club. He tells us that Taylor was miserable after participating in the water Jeopardy game. Mr. Richards also is convinced that Ms. Durden was punishing Jessica for not taking Pledge Week seriously enough with water Jeopardy. Alex even informed Taylor of a story about a lady dying from drinking too much water. Finally, we come to Taylor Durden's questioning and affidavit. Taylor says herself that she thinks everyone who joins ESE should take the honor and responsibility seriously, confirming Alex's suspicions that she might have been annoyed that Jessica was goofing off. She also confessed that she may have teased some of the pledges. The question that I would like to bring to your attention now is, how much pressure does a senior teasing a pledge put on him or her to do whatever she or he is being teased about not doing? Taylor Durden claims that she is not guilty of hazing, yet she says that the information session on hazing she attended was boring, proving that she could not have been paying much attention. She was aware that water Jeopardy might be considered hazing, so much so that she called college office and student affairs to ask. When she didn't get a reply, she assumed it was fine and went on with Pledge Week. Taylor Durden willfully made Jessica Bateson drink so much water, and definitely was reckless by not even making sure that the Jeopardy game was not hazing. When it comes down to the facts, whether you like her or not, Ms. Durden is guilty of hazing and manslaughter. Taylor Durden is responsible for the death of Jessica Bateson.
I liked your first line.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant, Taylor Durden, was charged with involuntary manslaughter and hazing. Both being very serious crimes, they resulted in the death of one classmate during Pledge Week at Rhode Island College. That classmate was Jessica Bateson. Rhode Island's criminal statutes state the elements of involuntary manslaughter. This was an unintentional homicide. In this case, the unintentional homicide was Jessica Bateson's death as a result of over-consuming water, causing her brainstem to swell. The second element is that it must be committed in the performance of an unlawful act, in this case hazing. Also, Taylor Durden committed an act that resulted in the death of Jessica Bateson. Rhode Island's criminal statutes also state the elements of hazing. The person who is the victim of the crime has to be a participant in the activity. In this case, Jessica Bateson was a participant in the activity of water Jeopardy. Taylor Durden has said that this was done with no supervision from the college or legal authority. Pledge Week was a student organization, and water Jeopardy was not done under the supervision of the college or legal authority. It was held on private property, and Taylor Durden willfully and recklessly endangered the physical health of Jessica Bateson, which resulted in her death. During the initiation to the ESE, Jessica had forced consumption of a beverage and forced physical activity, which affected her physical health. On Saturday, August 29, 2011, Taylor Durden organized a game for Pledge Week called Water Jeopardy when Jessica Bateson pledged the sorority. She was forced to drink 5 gallons of water separately over the course of an hour's time. This caused Jessica to suffer from acute hyponatremia, and she died that night. Our expert, Dr. Jamie Chesler, said that this is a rare occasion because hyponatremia is most common in older people and infants and can only be caused by forced consumption of water or overconsumption of water. Their expert said that this was an accident and could not be only caused by forced consumption of water, which is false. Because of this, we have proven our case. Now that you have heard the defendant's case, the expert that is testifying that Jessica Bateson's death was an accident is no more than a hired gun and is biased. Dr. Ryan Paulson is being paid a certain amount of money an hour to testify what the defense lawyers want him to. This makes for an unfair trial. By the evidence we have introduced, you can see that Taylor Durden is guilty of the charges that she is faced with after taking the life of an innocent young woman. I leave fate to decide the verdict of this trial.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if it is not clearly seen yet that Mr. or Mrs. Durden is guilty, let me recap for you. The action of homicide is defined as a person who wantonly or recklessly does an action that results in a death or another human being and is guilty of manslaughter, even though he or she did not contemplate such a result. Nothing more is required than intentionally doing an act which, by reason of wanton or reckless character, exposes another to injury and causes such injury or death. I and many others in this courtroom believe that Taylor Durden is extremely reckless, including Alex Richards, who said, and I quote, "This year, Taylor Durden is fixated on pushing pleasures even further than we did before." Taylor himself called the Office of Student Affairs multiple times and never got any confirmation if water jeopardy was not hazing. This proves his own recklessness and his care for human life. On the prosecution side of my own, you will hear from Sergeant Chris Knight, who proved that Cole Bateson was a reckless character who was one of many Taylor Durden's associates and friends that could have influenced him because of their age and peer pressure. He also shares a hunch or curiosity, you could say, for Tammy Kane, who died 2 days after Taylor Durden was released on bail. I too shares curiosity and pure coincidence. Then you hear from Dr. Jamie Chesler, who is a professional MD who bases his conclusions only on pure facts. That was weird. The doctor, he has an evidence of hyponatremia which could have only been caused by forced consumption. His statement is backed in Exhibit 5 by Dr. Gerald, who approved of this, and the doctor at the Office of Coroner who did the official autopsy for the police. That is 3 doctors who have approved of this one diagnostic, and 1 who is a possible hired gun who says otherwise. And finally, you will hear from Alex Richards, who proves Durden to be a reckless character. Taylor Durden ignored both Richards and Tammy Kane's warning about consumption of water being lethal. Personally, I would not have listened if 1 had told me such thing. But if 2, and 1 especially being a medical student, I would immediately listen and stop whatever could have hurt someone. Then, on the defense side, you heard from Taylor Durden, who has proven himself to be a reckless character who associates with other reckless characters. He has even said himself, every year there's an unspoken and unwritten challenge for pledge masters to add something to the ESC pledge activities, or push the limits of what activities we were doing. I personally believe Taylor's addition to activity were a little too much and may have been overboard, especially if 1 had passed out 2 years prior. And finally, and then you have also heard from Ryan Paulson, who is a hired gun, despite what he has said. He admitted that he makes $200,000 a year just from testifying at these trials. Now, if I were earning that much money, I would not want to disappoint my employers. And I would maybe have to change my evidence a little to help them in any case. And Dr. Paulson has some bad opinions, you could say, on Dr. Chesler. But he bases all his facts of him cheating off his son, who has been convicted of drug abuse. Now, I will not consider the person convicted of drug abuse a reliable source to use. And then finally you heard from Carson Baker, who makes many facts and opinions on Alex Richards. and Tammy Kane's, though he cannot back them because he has openly admitted that he has not been to one social mixer, dance, or anything and has not even moved to the house. Maybe his opinions aren't as reliable as he's thought, and maybe he does not know as much about the ESC as he lets on. In conclusion, Taylor Durden is guilty on account of manslaughter/homicide. Taylor has been proven to be a reckless coward by Alex Richards, Sergeant Knight, and himself. On a case of this importance, who would you rather trust? A reckless and possible murder? A doctor for hire? A know-it-all who can get his facts straight? Or would you rather trust a police sergeant sworn to protect the innocent, an accomplished doctor with 2 others backing his facts, or a qualified young man who is head of a group of the smartest kids in his college with a 4.0 GPA? I, myself, would trust the second option and prove that Taylor Durden is completely guilty of homicide. Thank you.
455. Nicely done.